Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming into this session. This is a special session. Special because, this was brought to us by a longtime tenured member of the chamber, and she thought that this was the right time and our community needed to get this information, and we truly appreciate that. For those who may not know, my name is Melvin Coleman. I'm the president and CEO of the ABC, and again, I'm glad you came into this session. Critical information, understanding the Digital Equity Act. And without any further delay from me, I want to bring onto the stage my sister, again, been a member of the chamber for a long time, Miss Venus R. Lockett. She's going to introduce herself, and we'll get down to business. Venus, good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you and the rest of you all. You all look great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Melvin, for putting the emphasis on the R. My name is Venus R. Lockett, and I do put the emphasis on that because there's another Venus Lockett out there, but I am me and she is she. And I wear several hats in the financial services arena. And directly related to this focus, I am a member of the Atlanta Black Chambers, as Melvin mentioned. I'm honored to serve on the Georgia's Digital Connectivity Advisory Council and to be able to support Oneisha and others to raise awareness and make connections to help present an empowering plan for Georgia. I currently serve as the Bank on Atlanta Program Manager for the City of Atlanta and housed in the Mayor's Office of Innovation and Performance. I serve as a lead advisor for the soon-to-be-launched Bank on Georgia program, and I am the initiator and co-founder of the soon-to-be-launched Georgia Asset Building Coalition. I wear a few more hats, but I won't bore y'all with that. But just know that I have a heart for community, especially in the financial empowerment space. So thank you again, Melvin and the ABC, for allowing us this platform to share extremely important information related to the Digital Equity Act and planning for Georgia with ABC members. I especially thank all of you for taking the time out of your loaded schedules. I know you probably are as busy as we are to join us to learn and be informed about what's happening in Georgia and what's to come as it relates to the Digital Equity Act and planning. So in my work, I build and lead coalitions, but when I ask my colleagues and leaders in my coalitions if they are familiar with the Digital Equity Act, a few have heard about it, but have not connected the dots of how it relates to them and the work that they're doing, and others have never heard about it, which is not a bad thing, but we're in the right space to share this information. But to me, this is unacceptable in our arena as digital equity access affects every aspect of our lives. So it is my goal to help raise awareness in every area of our state and to share opportunities to include the needed voices and then opportunities to engage accordingly. So today you will hear from ABC member Montez Diamond, but I'll turn that over to Melvin, who will share related information, to you as business owners, and then from Oneisha Freeman, the Digital Connectivity Manager at the Georgia Technology Authority. And so before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please just indicate with a simple yes or no if you are familiar with the Digital Equity Act. Melvin?
Okay, thank you, Venus. And I see some no's in the chat, so the question must have already been put out there. Okay, so as Venus mentioned, we're first going to hear from ABC member Montez Diamond, who is an advocate with the SBA, and I'm going to let her tell you, what that means when she introduces herself and tells you who she is and what she does, because I think that's important for you to understand, say who she is in that role as well. So Montez, great to see you, sis. And please introduce yourself to the attendees today.
For sure. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for the leadership of the Atlanta Black Chambers, as well as the membership, for allowing me to be here to add value to the conversation regarding this act. My name is Montez Diamond. I serve as the SBA Region 4 Advocate for the Office of Advocacy. We are an independent internal regulatory watchdog organization that is housed within the SBA. I'm an advocate for the southeastern region of the United States, which includes Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, as well as Mississippi. And as that pertains particularly to the Digital Equity Act, I'll be discussing this from the position of advocacy and how businesses can use the comment process to be able to leverage how the funds are being appropriated can be effectively and equitably distributed. And the way in which I like to be able to posture the conversation will be around discussing three important points: the legislative background and underpinnings, as well as why should you care as a business and small business and or enterprise, and how to comment and follow up regarding this process to be able to empower yourself and use your agency within the process as a business owner. So as it pertains to the legislative background and underpinnings, the Biden administration had a goal to be able to provide support, to provide affordable, high-speed, reliable internet service and resources necessary to realize the full potential for these opportunities within every American household. And so Congress was able to pass this bipartisan basis by way through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021 through public law. It's also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And this is supposed to appropriate more than $42.45 billion through three grant opportunities that are going to trickle down to the state level, which is why it's very important that we're having this discussion today. And very rare when you have an opportunity to have the federal perspective and then state representation to be able to explain how to position yourself as a small business to be able to leverage the opportunity. As it pertains to why this is so important as well, is because the agency that's going to be appropriating the funds is the actual National Telecommunications and Information Administration. This is important because when this law was passed, it was placed in something called the Federal Register. The Federal Register is known as a docket, and this is where they place the official daily publication for rules, proposed rules, and notices of federal agencies and organizations, as well as executive orders by way of presidential documentation. In support of publishing that law, the National Telecommunications Information Administration is using the law with a plan to address problems to accomplish its goals as it pertains to notifying the public, giving them an opportunity as well to comment on various comments. The National Telecommunications Administration and Information Administration is located within the Department of Commerce, as well as they want to be able to address the executive branch agency within their agency that primarily provides a responsibility by law to advise the president on national telecommunications and information policy issues. So this organization has provided an opportunity for comment for small businesses, particularly as it pertains to why you should care as a business owner. The National Administration for Telecommunications and Information wants and has published a request for comment from specifically partners that are business partners, stakeholders, most importantly, individuals who have lived with experiences and faced challenges of having access to or skills and devices to fully utilize affordable, reliable, high-speed internet service to help meet the president's goals to close the digital divide and transform the lives of Americans. This particular agency put out an opportunity for businesses, particularly and stakeholders, to comment on how to implement and how to be able to scrutinize the manner in which they're going to distribute the notice of funding as to how they distribute the grants. So as a small business, you have positioning to be able to talk about the eligibility and the criteria that's going to be used as to how to equitably distribute these various funds. This can look like for small businesses through various ranges. In the event that they extend this to provide comment, you also will have an opportunity, and they'll publish this in the Federal Register, to be able to speak specifically as to small businesses, as in regarding the notice of funding. Why this is so important regarding eligibility and criteria is because as a small business, if you're in the consultative area, administrative area, you get to talk to how to meet the digital needs of demographics that are going to be affected. You get to include technical grant writers, land surveyors, realtors. You get to measure grant outcomes, whether you're in data analytics, if you're a tech tool developer, nonprofit organizations that then distribute digital investments, as well as you get to impact the youth, young adults, our senior population, people that deal with language barriers, people that deal with literacy barriers, people that deal with training and development. So it encompasses all of the entire business spectrum. Definitely needs to be able to weigh in on how the notice of funding should include eligibility criteria to include these various businesses throughout the landscape and your businesses and what you specifically do. I'm going to close out with providing information about how to comment. You can provide comment by way of a number of ways. You can comment either specifically to the National National Telecommunications and Information Administration specifically, and/or you can email digitalequity@ntia.gov. The information I'm referring to is in the PowerPoint that's attached in the chat. You can email digitalequity@ntia.gov. That's going to go directly to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. You can also email a woman by the name of Jamie, Jamie Salom, SALOOM @sba.gov. She is the attorney that is attached to the regulatory part that's attached to being able to provide comment through our agency, through the SBA. You can also be able to send a written notice. I can't put it in the chat, no problem, Felicia. Thank you for that. As well as you can send or write a letter to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, and/or you can submit your comment on regulations.gov. I will give you a heads up. The official comment process ended on Monday at 5 p.m. However, it's not to be alarmed. Still send a comment in because, yes, I put the slides in the chat. It's a PowerPoint in the chat. Thank you, Janelle. You can still submit your comments. Anytime somebody says that the comment period has ended, there's always a way to still submit your comment and maintain your agency as well as positioning of empowerment as it pertains to being a business owner. I will ensure that I put the information in the chat at this time. Thank you so much for your attention as well as for allowing me to be able to share this information.
Montez Diamond, everyone. She is, and make sure I say this right, Montez, SBA advocate, or how do you say your title again, please?
SBA, Region 4 advocate for the Office of Advocacy for the SBA.
Okay, awesome. Fantastic. And she is a member of the Atlanta Black Chambers. Okay, awesome, fantastic. That was great information. And she is sharing the link or whatever access you need to everything she says. She's giving it to you in the chat. So please take the next step. And now I'm going to give it back to Venus to introduce our guest speaker for this session. Okay, Venus.
Yay, yay. And thank you, Montez. That was such powerful information. And, thank you for how you say connecting the dots for our members. Sometimes we think the process has ended, but we still have opportunities to engage, and to move things forward. So I have the pleasure of introducing Miss Oneisha Freeman. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her background. I'm not going to take away time because she has a wealth of information to share, but I will tell you this hour and a half or what we have left is probably not enough time for you all to learn what you all need to know about engaging and supporting this process. So Ms. Oneisha Freeman is the digital connectivity manager at the Georgia Technology Association. And I'll tell you, when I met her, she was the right person in the seat, because for me, I'm a community person, and it's about empowerment our communities for me. But when I met her, we are kindred spirits and have like mind and heart. So Oneisha, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you all spending your afternoon with me. I am going to share a PowerPoint presentation, and as a part of this presentation, I will be engaging you. So find the chat, because I'm going to be asking you questions and asking you to put numbers in the chat, because I definitely want to make sure that we are having a community conversation. I work at the state agency. It is called the Georgia Technology Authority. And I one of a team of 3, which I'll show you the other 2 team members here. And we are your state of Georgia point of contacts for all things internet access and digital equity, inclusion, digital divide from the state level perspective. We are the agency that will be administering the funding for broadband internet expansion and digital equity program development, scaling, and things of that nature. And I'll go more into that here in a second. So a lot of the things that Montez covered was about on the federal level, but the federal government is going to be distributing funds to the states to then distribute to the communities. And so our team are responsible for that funding that we will actually receive on the state level, which will affect each and every one of you directly and or indirectly. Before I start my PowerPoint presentation, I want to kind of set the stage for you as far as the way the conversation will go. Each of you are business owners. You may be nonprofit leaders, but I want you to also consider this conversation from the perspective of yourself as a Georgia citizen as well. So think of maybe where you work. Well, where you work, you might work at your business, but where you worship, where you volunteer, where you maybe if you are part of a sorority or fraternity or any other type of association in your community, you might be leading, you may be a local politician or representative, commissioner, anything of that nature. I want you to put on all the hats today as we go through this conversation, because if you only think of yourself as a business owner, you may miss out and say, well, you know, we're good on devices. But then when you think about maybe your community, you may even also, I would say this, if you are from Georgia particularly, think about the community where you were born and raised as well, because at this point, we're representing all those things. So I'll go ahead and share. So everybody got all their hats on, right? Okay, good. So I'm going to go ahead and share my PowerPoint presentation. We'll get started. All right, here we go. Share. Then I'm going to go into presentation mode. Come on, presentation mode. Okay, I'm in presentation mode, yes?
Yes.
You are.
Excellent. Okay. So you will hear this a lot going forward, which is Let's Connect Georgia. This is the campaign that we will be really thinking about as we expand broadband internet. When you hear the word broadband, just think internet access, and then digital connectivity across our state. This is your broadband team for the state of Georgia. It is myself. I am the digital connectivity manager. Josh is my boss. He's the broadband director. And Jessica Simmons is the deputy CIO of broadband and special projects. So you can also reach out directly to each and every one of us, and I will share our contact information at the end so that you can, if you have any questions or concerns or challenges in regard to broadband internet access. So when you think about how we actually connect Georgia, we are looking at every single county across our state. Digital equity is the goal. Doesn't mean that everybody has the same thing. It just means that everybody has what they need. The digital divide is the issue, and digital inclusion is the bridge over the divide in order to achieve equity. With these five areas: robust, affordable internet service, internet-enabled devices that meet the needs of the end user. So that could be a laptop, a desktop, or a tablet. We are not necessarily considering, I want to say this, that we are not necessarily considering cell phones in the vein of this conversation. We are really looking at, for the most part, when we think about devices, desktops, laptops, tablets, things like that. Also, access to digital literacy training, quality technical support, and then applications and online content designed to enable self-sufficiency, participation, and collaboration. So if you are saying to yourself, the kids got laptops from the school, they're Chromebooks, they're good, we gotta push beyond that, because we are looking at doing this work in our rural communities, our urban centers, our small towns, vast open spaces in every single corner of our state. The goal from the federal government perspective is internet for all. That does not mean that everybody will connect though, because we still know that there's a digital divide, but it does mean that the historic investments will be made in the availability of internet in the different communities from the infrastructure perspective. We all know just because something is there don't mean everybody can get to it, or especially in regards to affording it. But the investments will be at every corner of our city. So if you see a county here where you were born and raised or your family them live at, think about their level of access maybe in relation to or yours. Access not just to the internet, but all the other areas that I mentioned before when we look at equity and connectivity. So what does this mean? This means that every student that had to sit outside the library or McDonald's to access Wi-Fi to complete their schoolwork during the pandemic. We're looking at every senior that had to stay at home or that stays in their home and don't have access to world-class healthcare. You may or may not know that there's parts of our state that where hospitals do not exist. And so imagine how healthcare can be changed, access to health or the health of that community can be changed if with the accessibility of telehealth. So yeah, this work is not about technology, it's about people. It's about the farmers that can't access the latest technology to grow their business, the entrepreneurs, like many of you who are running businesses or want to start, folks that want to start small businesses, every community that wants to broaden their engagement, every veteran that wants to stay connected to their fellow service members and join the workforce when they get out of the military, every person that is in their home and trying to work remotely or wanting to or needing to learn remotely, particularly in our rural areas. Every teacher that is, that needs to digitally support their student, they're taking work home. And when they get there, they don't always have the necessary access that they may need. Every parent who wants to learn a new skill to support their family, every prior offender who is looking for a second chance, every refugee who now calls Georgia home, every concerned citizen that's homebound and wants to still engage in their community, and every single job applicant that had to do their video interview, but that interview dropped because their internet service was too slow. This is not about technology. It is about the people of Georgia and how we can increase our economic, financial, health, all the things for our different communities. And how does technology play a part in that? So real quick, I'm gonna try to give you guys a quick and dirty on what Georgia from the state of Georgia has done so far. So through the American Rescue Plan Act, almost $700 million have been invested when you combine it with matching funds from our internet service providers. Those investments, the projects have to be completed by December 31st, 2026. These are infrastructure investments, internet infrastructure investments. I want to say the American Rescue Plan Act project started last year. And then right after that, we have our Capital Projects Fund. This is also to investments that are being made for internet infrastructure, literally fiber in the ground. More than $450 million has been invested when you combine it with matching funds. So that's state funding and the private funds that the provider had to do the project. This was announced by Governor Kemp at the beginning of this year. So those projects, and then there's another round of projects that are going to be funded here in a couple, maybe a month or so. It should be announced. And those projects will be completed by December 31st. I'm letting you all know this because if you are currently doing business in these areas or want to do business in these areas, you will start to see that the infrastructure is improving, the internet service infrastructure is improving, but we still have a ways to go. So if you look at this map, this is the Georgia broadband map. This map was last refreshed on July 1st, 2022, but another version of it is coming. When you look at this little box on the right-hand side, you see those red dots. Those red dots are individual addresses where people live. And then the lines are the census blocks. So you can kind of see that there's some of these blocks where there's like 2 or 3 houses or buildings in that specific community. The light yellow shows that those are currently looked at as unserved communities. Well, the thing about this is it's very expensive for the internet service providers to serve those communities, to serve those addresses. That's why they are still unserved. If you follow the money, if you look at historically, there has been situations where providers will not build in areas where that is not economically beneficial to them. However, with the current funding and previous funding, that is beginning to change. This is another map that's kind of overlaying all the different projects that are currently going on, and the capital projects fund awards that I just showed you all, that I just mentioned, kind of shows some of the areas, some of the counties where current infrastructure bills are happening. So if you do business in these areas, know that the internet, or your family lives there, know that the internet infrastructure is improving. But you see that there's a lot of blue spots, but there's still some white areas, because remember, it's by address, it's not the whole county. So like an internet service provider isn't necessarily going to say, I'm going to serve Wilkinson County. They're going to say, I'm going to serve these specific addresses in Wilkinson County or Twiggs County. So for any other addresses in those same areas that need to be served, the BEAD funding that I'll talk about in just a second will come to help support and serve those specific areas. Do y'all have any questions about our current projects that we've already been funding or that are coming online here pretty soon?
So there's a question in the chat. Venus, do you see Patrick
Yep.
Alexander's question? Is that something we want to address later?
Yeah, it is later. Once she talks about the funding and,
Okay.
all of that, that'll be the time for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Done. And if I don't address it, just stop me, y'all. So real quick, when you hear unserved, you're talking about 25 up and 3 down. Very, very slow, not accessible, not efficient. It is currently unserved. If you are at 25, your speed of internet is at 25.3 or over or under, it is unserved. 100 over 20 is what we're trying to get to, much faster. The current projects that are being built out in our community are at 100 over 20. We do not know how much bandwidth we're going to need in the future. Nobody really knows. The more people are using the internet, the more bandwidth we're going to need, which is why we're looking at investing in the fiber to the premises, broadband fiber, so that we can look at a future-proof option for internet service. And I kind of talked about this a second ago, that when you looked at those dots and you saw that there was 1 or 2 dots in that light area, that's kind of the last mile. So investments have been made in the more urban areas, middle mile, which think of that as the roads. But when you think of dirt roads or things of that nature, houses that are spread out in sparse areas, that is the last mile. For the most part, that is what the new investments will be in. When you get to the point where you're talking about internet access, you gotta have the infrastructure there. It is going to take time, but it will improve. However, what we know that is still going to be a challenge is how folks are able to actually connect to those services. So here are the 5 areas of digital connectivity that the state of Georgia's investments will go to address. Broadband access around affordability and accessibility to reliable, high-speed home internet service, ideally fiber, but people gotta afford it. Accessible and inclusive content in all communities. That includes accessible technology for the blind and print disabled, for our deaf and hard of hearing, for our aging population, but also accessible content online and just the way people and government agencies design their sites, devices and technical support, privacy and security, and digital literacy and skills. And I'm going to get into this a little bit more later, but when we talk about digital connectivity in Georgia, you may not hear us say digital equity. No surprise, that term doesn't necessarily land well with everyone, but it's important for everyone to be locked in on what this is, how this is going to affect community members. So you'll hear us say digital connectivity and internet access. So I want to get you all to rate your community, the one you live in currently, the one you came, maybe you were born and raised in, or you can look at the county or the state. How prepared is your current community to address the following barriers to accessing and connecting to the internet? So in the chat, you can put a 1 or 2 or 3. 1 is not prepared, 2 is somewhat prepared, and 3 is prepared. So the first is upskilling the local workforce. Are we not prepared, somewhat prepared, or prepared? And I may go through this a little fast for the sake of time, but I appreciate everyone chiming in. Matter of fact, Venus, can you monitor the chat? Let me know when I can go to the next one.
Sure. I think people are still putting in, so
Okay.
just a few more seconds.
Very good. Okay. The next one is going to be accessing.
I think we've got the most of them, so you can move to the, they're still putting in though. But
Okay,
yeah.
No worries. The next one is going to be accessing devices. Accessing devices.
There you go.
Are we, 1, not prepared accessing devices beyond the schools, because we know that our schools are equipped to give computers to kids. Beyond the schools, are we somewhat prepared or prepared? Or don't know, or you have no idea? Yeah, you can put a 4 in there if you need to. That's okay. Or 0, put 0 for you don't know. The scale is on the slide. 1 is not prepared. It's on the left-hand side in the green box. 1 not prepared, 2 somewhat prepared, or 3 prepared. 1 is not prepared at all. 3 is prepared. 0, you have no clue.
That's fair.
All right, going on. The next one is technical support for devices. Technical support for devices. Are there technical support services for devices that people can't afford? Meaning, I need to go somewhere because my computer has a blue screen of death and I don't know how to fix it, or my computer has a virus, things of that nature. Okay. Next is staff to support online navigation. Staff to support, I'm trying to put it in the chat, online navigation. Staff to support online navigation, sorry. And honestly, a lot of this takes people. It's no matter how much technology, we said it was about the people, but no matter how much technology we have, we need people to help folks do the things that they need to do. And then eventually some folks will be able to get there. Okay, next is digital skills training. Are there computer classes, maybe foundational or more advanced computer classes, technology classes in your community? Do you think your community members are, Got so many screens going here. Digital skills training. Do you think your community members are prepped and ready to, or do they already have access to training for digital skills? Okay. For the sake of time, we'll go a little bit faster. Support for systemically disadvantaged community members. Particularly with access to the internet or technology devices and things of that nature. Is there support for community members in your community? It slowed down a little bit, so I'm going to getting the word out. Is your community prepared to get the word out, market, engage community engage community in new programs? There's lots of great programs, but nobody knows about them. That's a big challenge, right? All right, well, thank everybody for participating. I started this conversation this way because I really wanted us to start to think about our community as we're going through the funding that's coming. So we've sort of set the stage to say, these are some of the things that we know that our communities are not currently prepared to address. Now, the state is going to provide some funding, but that funding is going to go to either an internet service provider or a nonprofit or government agency and everybody in between to be able to address a lot of these challenges. So I'm going to talk about BEAD first, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Again, this is the infrastructure dollars. The BEAD programs support high-speed internet and planning. Infrastructure, and if there's any money left over, adoption. Nationwide, $42.45 billion for planning, infrastructure, and adoption. Georgia got about, let me see if the number is on here. I want to say five or 6 million to plan for our broadband equity, access, and deployment. We have 5 years for the planning. Actually, we don't have 5 years for the planning, but we have 5 years to spend the funds. But the first part of the process is to create a strategy. So the state of Georgia has received about $5 or $6 million for that. We are currently in the process of creating that BEAD strategy. This is the largest source of broadband funding ever. It is likened to bringing electricity to the rural areas. Priority is going to be given to building networks that connect to unserved and underserved locations, and then community anchor institutions. We do not know our exact allocation, but it will be in Georgia, it will be upwards of $1 billion to address broadband equity, access, and deployment in our state. Again, so we're in the process of planning, but sub-grants for this program are likely to start next year. The timeline is pretty much, like I said, planning, provisional grant, and then the infrastructure will start. Again, unserved locations, underserved locations, and then if there's money left over, community anchor institutions. We'll get at least $1 million, 100 million, but more than likely it'll be upwards of $1 billion to address this. Here are some of the service deployments under this program. Will issue sub-grants that will require matching funds to deploy broadband infrastructure and deliver service. Everybody might not have matching funds. Let me say that. But that is the way it is going to be distributed. Projects have to comply with fair labor standards and cybersecurity practices. We are developing a workforce development plan so that we can look at ways that the state of Georgia community members can be a part of the deployment of broadband. So think local folks in the community being able to get the jobs that are laying fiber, the construction jobs, and anything else that comes with deploying broadband service in that community. We are asking for low-cost service options when folks are applying for the funds. And we are wanting them, of course, to comply with state and federal environmental laws and have a climate threat assessment. So this is a part of the process. I'll pause for a second and see if anyone has any questions real quick on the funding for broadband equity, access, and deployment.
Sure. So there was a question for to clarify whether it was 5 billion or 5 million or 5 billion.
Million. I'm sorry. If I said billion, I meant million.
Okay.
Million we got last year. We got about 5 million, and I'll find the exact, maybe somebody can Google real quick. If you just Google state of Georgia broadband, you might see the exact number, but it's about 5 to 6 million for our broadband equity and BEAD strategy and plan. So it's like the first thing they did was give planning dollars to get us kind of ready for all the other things that are going to happen. So currently we are in the process of creating that BEAD strategy. The funding just doesn't have to be spent right away, unlike the digital equity funds that I'll talk about in just a second. Who would we contact us?
Yeah, I'm saving that one for later.
Okay.
Yeah, when we talk about, the other stuff. So
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I keep going. So the good thing about Georgia, remember how I said we've already done grant programs with ARPA and the capital projects. So because we've already ran 2 grant programs, unlike some of other states, we at least have that part kind of done. So as soon as we get the funds, we can kind of get the stuff rolling out. The only thing that'll slow us down is, just going through the federal regulations and things of that nature. So when it is an opportunity for you all to comment on NTIA's BEAD, I'm not exactly sure what they'll put out, but whenever there's an opportunity to comment, know that whatever your comment is for the NTIA program will affect Georgia's distribution of these funds, because whatever regulations they come up with is what we're going to be held to. So I think everybody needs to have a voice in both the state level and the federal level, because it's all going to affect, one's going to affect the other. She said, do we have to be a resident or just do business in the state? In order to get funding for digital equity, you will have to be a nonprofit organization, part of a coalition, like if there's a coalition, government agency. Those are the types of agencies that can apply, not a for-profit business as it stands today. A for-profit business could not apply for the funds, but if it is a nonprofit business, you can apply for the funds. None of these funds that I'm speaking of is going directly to a resident of any community. All of these funds are going to organizations or internet service providers that will then provide the services to the community members.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of discuss that, after you finish your presentation, because that's one of the reasons why I definitely wanted the chamber to be involved, because there's so many different organizations and businesses. And I think the chamber is positioned to possibly apply, but they're looking for collaborations. And this is not work of silos. It's collaborations, to make your collective strong to provide these services.
For the sake of time, I'm actually going to skip that slide and go to this one. The Digital Equity Act program is $2.75 billion across the states and territories to establish programs for skills, technology, and capacity of our residents to reap the full benefits of the digital economy. That was a lot. 2.75 billion, Georgia's gonna get a piece of that. We do not know our allocation. Whatever it is, we gotta make the best use of it though. We have already received $1.5 million for planning to create a statewide digital equity plan. That is my actual job, to engage the community and then create that plan and then develop a grant for local stakeholders to then be able to apply for. So I'm your point of contact for this specific fund, these specific funds when they come to the state. These funds are aimed to ensure that all community members can access and use the internet, meet their needs and improve their life. We will create a statewide digital equity plan. Then we'll create a program to implement that plan, which will be a grant. That those funds will be distributed, or the grant will probably be fully stood up, hopefully spring of next year. They haven't really told us when they're gonna tell us the allocation. However, to go back for a second, for BEAD, the actual infrastructure allocation, we will know in June how much money. So out of this money right here, this money for Georgia, we will know exactly how much we will receive in June of this year. For Digital Equity Act, we haven't been told, haven't been quite told yet how much we will receive, but it'll be based on like our population and the population of the number of covered the number of covered residents, number of people in the covered populations in our state, and also our unserved and underserved communities. So they have some kind of a formula they'll use, probably the same formula they use to determine how much planning dollars we got. So we got 1.5 million to plan for our programs. Now, after the Digital Equity Act, in addition to the state, the federal agency, NTIA, will also create a plan, will have a competitive grant. So the state will do a capacity grant and the federal government will do a competitive grant. If a person applies for the state capacity grant and receives those funds, that organization cannot apply for the federal competitive grant. More to come on that because it's not going to be till sometime next year. However, when they ask for comments about how they should run these programs, this is the time to let your voice be heard. Now, you might be asking who, what, and how. So I already talked about the what we be investing in: broadband, affordability, accessible content, devices, privacy and security, and digital literacy. But the who is the list on the right-hand side. So this is not any and everybody necessarily. We do want to support and help every resident of Georgia. So when you look at unserved and underserved communities, we're not talking about income level. We're talking about, do they have internet access or not? But when we talk about digital connectivity, we're only specifically looking at these populations. These are the people that are traditionally not considered when we talk about funding. Rural residents, low-income individuals, veterans, aging individuals, because we'll all find ourselves in the senior citizens checkbox at some point in time. Individuals with disabilities, English learners, which includes people that have low literacy, which is a lot of adult learners. Maybe people are looking to get their GED. Not that everybody that gets their GED has low literacy. My point is folks with low literacy, racial and ethnic minorities, which would include immigrants and refugees and incarcerated individuals. Yes, those that are currently incarcerated, not in federal, though, not in federal prisons, but are currently incarcerated, and those that are in the provisions for them to prevent them from going back into the system. So these are the programs that we'll be investing in for these specific populations of people. I'm going to pause right there and see if anybody has a question. And we're going
So Rosalind asked, is this where the digital literacy training programs will be funded under this grant?
Yes, they will. And let me tell you all, the grant has not been developed. We're just in planning right now. We're just trying to understand what is digital equity in our state. What is our vision for digital equity? What is our objectives for digital equity? We're in the very beginning. That's why it's so great that we all are having this conversation right now, because the grant has not been developed. The plan has not been developed. And now we are going to be looking at these areas, and we are going to be looking at these populations, but how we serve them is still, we're still trying to gather the information right now. So this is the time to be involved and locked in. And we'll talk a little bit more about some specific things you all can do. Let me check my time because I want to make sure I'm staying on course here. Any other questions?
Well, yeah, we'll address that because, it's related to the nonprofits and things like that. So go ahead and get finished, and then we can circle back with the other questions because I think they're all related.
Okay.
Most of them are. Thanks.
Absolutely. So I read over this already, but one more time, the State Digital Equity Capacity Grant, we will run, me and the folks at GTA will develop. The Digital Equity Competitive Grant will come from the federal agency NTIA. That grant will be, ours will start in 2024, theirs will start in 2025. They'll be closely aligned with each other, but and we are the request for, they just put out a request for comments. That's what Montez was talking about at the beginning of our presentation. The request for comments for their competitive grant and because of course they're going to regulate ours as well, close on May 1st, but it's still time for you all to give some feedback on that. The other thing I'll say is that we will also ask for a request for comment. So when our plan is developed, which we are working on it now, we'll have it around September timeframe. We will post it for public comment. It'll be posted on our website, but we'll share out with organizations to be able to give us comments and feedback on our actual plan. So I would love to come back to this same group and have a listening session where we go through our plan and actually get you all to give us some feedback on what we've developed. Because once we get all those comments, then we will finalize our plan, finalize it in the sense of as far as we're concerned, and then we'll submit it over to NTIA, and then we'll go back and forth with them for a while, curing the plan, and then we'll be on our way. So our plan has to be submitted by November 15th, and all of our planning funds have to be spent by November 15th as well. So that's where we are today. Stop me if anybody has a question. As far as, so if you think about like what this could look like funding wise, what the money could go to, think about a community-based organization being able to loan out devices or provide digital skills training. How about a senior center or a community center that doesn't currently have enough computers? Maybe they don't have no computers, and maybe they don't have a computer lab, or maybe it's insufficient. Maybe they only have 4 computers, but they have 400 people that come through there every day. So it could be funding to help expand that space so that it's situated in a way where folks can actually do classes and staff up that space with digital navigators and digital skills staff, aids for folks with disabilities. Think about marketing. Marketing is not the best. You guys understand marketing because you're business owners, but in the nonprofit space, marketing is not the best word to use, but y'all know what I'm saying. Engagement, outreach. Again, lots of great programs, but they may not have the capacity to do marketing to get the word out. So we want to make sure that if we're going to fund great programs, we want to also provide them with the necessary support to be able to reach the people that they're looking at, that they're trying to reach. And that costs money. And then we do want to make sure folks are capable of getting at least 1 gig of connectivity from their provider in those organizations. And same thing with some telehealth. So these are just some examples of some ways that those funds can be used in the community. So with that said, how should we prioritize the spending of the money? We're gonna do our 1, 2, 3 again. 3 is very high priority, 2 high, and 1 is medium. I didn't want to say low because none of this is low priority. None of it is low priority. We need to do all of these things, but especially because we don't know our funding allocation, we are going to have to prioritize some of the things over others. So if you think what's going to come up is a very high priority, you're going to put 3. If it's a lower, you'll put 1. 3 is high, 1 is low, 2 is in the middle. First and foremost, the question is, how should we prioritize when it comes to spending our digital equity funding, whatever it is that we get? And you can put your number in the chat. Helping local government, schools, and CBOs address local needs. I'm seeing a lot of 3s, a few 2s, some 3s, 2s. Absolutely. Next, increasing workforce opportunities. I see some 3s, very high. I see a lot of 3s. Does somebody want to unmute and tell me why? A lot of people put 3 here. I'm very curious as to why you, what makes you say that increasing workforce opportunities with digital equity funding should be a very, very high priority. If you can unmute.
This is Kobe. The one thing that was a driver for my 3, categorizing as a 3, is because of the transitioning and evolution of how jobs are performed from remote working from home, and different things like that. And also from the education and training standpoint, where they need this access to really be competitive for jobs and job opportunities. Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Robert Gordon. I'm in 110% agreement with the previous speaker. He's totally on point.
Very good. Thank you.
And Oneisha, can I just kind of chime in from the summit? I co-hosted a summit, a national summit for state digital equity planners. And one thing that rose to the top for me is that we have some organizations that are working with incarcerated individuals, training them on, some aspects of the broadband. I forget what areas they were before they got out, so that they could have jobs when they got out. And I thought that was just really, really awesome. So, definitely a 3 on that.
Absolutely. Working with our Department of Corrections. The next one is digital skill building classes as far as a priority. So if y'all can chime in on digital skill building classes. Working with our Department of Corrections, one of the challenges has been security. People are very savvy and very smart. A lot of folks are incarcerated individuals, and you know, it unfortunately becomes a challenge when you want to serve them and provide learning opportunities for incarcerated individuals. But the one plus is that you got their undivided attention because they can't go nowhere and they're gonna be there the next day. So hopefully not too long, but we are going to think through some very creative ways to reduce recidivism. We have to educate folks when they're there, when they get out, and provide both workforce opportunities, digital skills opportunities. There's actually been some talk around providing training as fiber optic technicians for folks that are, incarcerated, to be able to help and support the broadband infrastructure, which could be amazing because the ISPs do have a shortage of staff, which a lot of us are challenged with finding good folks. And so we got to get creative around training. So everything from working with the K-12 CTAE departments to working with our DOC, Department of Corrections, and working with our technical colleges. The next one is supporting programs in rural communities. One of the things you have to consider here is that there's rural communities that have very unreliable or no internet at all. So it will be advantageous for us to help and support rural communities. But they have the furthest, and they have the furthest to go when we look at programs. So it's going to take funds, it's going to take professional development and all of those things to support them with digital equity programs. Because right now they can't consider devices if they don't even have internet access. It's not something they're thinking about right now, but it's going to have to be thought through because the money will be gone by the time the nonprofit in Camilla, Georgia starts thinking about, wait a minute, now we got this internet, how we gonna get it connected to it, So that is an area that we want to provide more support, but in the vein of priorities, should we prioritize areas that already have some of these things going on and help them scale, or someone that started from scratch? That's something we have to consider. Or maybe somewhere in between is probably where we're gonna fall, but just something to consider. All right, next is, this is an interesting topic, providing a state subsidy for helping households, state subsidy program. Sorry, this might not fully make sense. What I was trying to say is a state subsidy program that helps households better afford internet access. So currently there is a federal subsidy, it's $30. People can get low cost internet access. But what would you all want us to provide funds for individual households to pay for their internet? That's basically the question. Is this a high priority, helping people pay for internet, or medium or low, or high or medium? I'm on the fence about this one, to be honest, because of the fact that, and this would only be if the federal subsidy is not available. So first, we're going to provide support for folks to actually just use the federal subsidy. But if for whatever reason that federal subsidy goes away, then we could consider a state subsidy. How expensive this is, I don't quite know yet, but it's something we may consider. Next is technical support services for community members. Is this a high priority? This is very staff heavy. But this is where public-private partnerships can definitely come into play. So maybe there's a business that does technical support that may be willing to train folks to get jobs at a help desk, right? Maybe it's a for-profit that's working alongside a nonprofit to serve the covered populations. Think, you could think of it like that. So I think this is a space that a for-profit business can definitely make a huge mark on the community. Next is technology career training. So think beyond foundational skills, actually preparing the workforce of the future to take these jobs in cybersecurity, in data analytics, I'm talking about the ones that make the big bucks, right? Data analytics, data science, anything with data at this point, it seems, programmers, help desk support people, because we're definitely gonna need them. Okay. Next is device ownership and or loaner programs. Device ownership and or loaner programs. It's a little known fact that I know that the Chromebooks are being sent home with the students. However, the schools don't want parents using those Chromebooks. And when our high school students are graduating from high school, and they're going off to college, they're going off without a computer. A lot of them, a lot of our students. So we have to think about beyond the school systems. Thank you, everybody, for chiming in. Improved cybersecurity measures. Improved cybersecurity measures. Funding to improve cybersecurity measures could look like training. It could look like, I'm not exactly sure, but I work at the Technology Authority, and cybersecurity is definitely on our radar high. So we have to look at maybe helping support organizations with improving their cybersecurity. And the last one is publicly available computer centers or hubs. So think beyond the school, beyond the library, where else could a computer center be? Are there local churches that have space that could be a computer center, but currently they just don't have the staff or the infrastructure, and we could help fund that staff and that infrastructure in that local church or in that local community space that is currently underutilized? Possibly, maybe not. So before I move on, Lisa says MARTA stations could be a location. They could. Maybe there's kiosks that could be built in certain communities for certain types of services. You just gave me a really an idea, Lisa. There's this kiosk that they're gonna start putting in our libraries that will it's kind of like a connection with the Department of Human Services, where folks can go on there and I think apply for services like SNAP and EBT and things of that nature. And so maybe something like that could even be in a MARTA station. And they're testing it out right now, but we're definitely thinking about ways to, utilize those little small kiosks in other areas. So before I go on, I would love for a couple of you guys to unmute. Now that you see all these potential areas that we could do spend the funds, I would love for a couple of you guys to unmute and just talk a little bit about where you sort of how you feel about these priority areas and what's going on and where we should prioritize. Feel free to unmute.
I would actually like for Rosalind to chime in. And Rosalind, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but Rosalind was a library director and very good in the community that she served and is real knowledgeable in some of these. So Rosalind.
I had just unmuted Venus.
Very good.
I really have to lean towards the skills building, the access in the homes and the access in the community centers, because what we find in libraries, a lot of our information is digital, but a lot of our folks did not have access to it. So we started investing in hotspots and loaning out computers and other things to make it available. Because one of the things I researched before I came to Clayton County was the fact that they were caught in the middle of the digital divide. So there were a lot of people, and still are a lot, who are not connected. So that connectivity piece, but also building the skills so that not only will the kids know how to use it, but the parents will know how to help the kids with it and be able to function, because the world around us is changing to digital. Even when you go to Walmart, you have to check yourself out most of the time just to get out of there. So we've got to embrace the digital community and teach our folks how to do the things that they need to do to function and to thrive.
Thank you, Rosalind. Real quick, I want to just speak to the fact that in Clayton County is actually currently today the only county in our entire state that actually has a digital equity plan and has prioritized digital equity from the county level. It's very new. You may not even know that. You may already know it, you may not know it, but they have an Office of Digital Equity. The person that works there, her name is Takia. She's awesome. It's a small team, but I'm really trying to uplift them as a office, because we need more of that across our state. There's not one in DeKalb County, there's not one in Gwinnett County, but we know that there's folks in every county that need some help and support and need to prioritize digital equity. So if you live in Clayton County, they are always doing signups for the Affordable Connectivity Program. They're doing digital literacy classes. Sometimes they even partner with giving out devices. I think they're doing a partnership with the library, but Takia is always looking for ways to expand the work that their office is doing. And it's just incredible. And we hope that Clayton County becomes a blueprint for the rest of the state as far as how to stand up a government office of digital equity that can then prioritize this in their county. So kudos to Clayton County.
And let me say, the day that you had your listening session, I called Bernita, and she was on her way somewhere. She turned around and she did come to that listening session, Rosalind. So she was there, and I think she did meet Takia, because I just had to tell them the great stuff that you all were doing as a library in the community.
Thank you.
And that, you know, that was, how you say, greatly attributed to you and your work and your leadership there too. So.
All right. For the sake of time, I'd love for you guys to chime in some more, but I do want to just talk a little bit about opportunities for you to get involved. I'm sure your wheels are spinning probably of lots of different ways you can get involved in this, but maybe I can call out a few specific things. First and foremost, the state, our office had been on a listening tour. We went all across the state and we're still going. We started in Columbus, Georgia. We yesterday I did a virtual in Augusta with Payne College. The president of Payne College was on that, but we're actually going to go in person. We had to reschedule it because of all the commencement stuff going on. So next in June, I think June 14th, we'll actually be in person in Augusta doing a presentation similar to this with community members. So if you live in Augusta, know people that lead organizations in Augusta, do business in Augusta, please come to that meeting. We would love to come to your virtual sessions, community meetings. So if you want us to come and have this conversation and kind of go through this presentation with your community members, please just let me know. We probably need about 2 or so weeks notice, and we'll come out and do this presentation with everyone. So don't scan that QR code, because I don't know where it's going to go. It may go to our website, but yes, we will do this in person and virtual, a similar presentation to this one. And people are constantly asking us, as a matter of fact, we should be in Chubbtown, Georgia, sometime next month. And we'll be back in Macon later on next month, I think, or this month. So how can Chamber of Commerce members get involved? First, advocacy. She talked about it. Montez talked about advocacy at the beginning of this presentation. Members of the Chamber of Commerce can engage in advocacy efforts to promote policies that address the unique needs of Black-owned businesses and communities. This can include engaging with local elected officials, participating in public comment periods, joining advocacy groups that focus on issues related to racial equity and economic justice. So advocacy is one major way you can get involved. In addition, education and outreach. Members can educate themselves and their communities about the importance of digital equity and the benefits of broadband infrastructure. This can include hosting informational events or sponsoring informational events. Sometimes people can host it, like the library might be able to host it or a nonprofit can host it, but they need somebody to sponsor the food or the t-shirts or entertainment. So that's a way that you all can get involved in supporting folks that are trying to do this work. This could include, I said, informational events, creating or helping to distribute materials and sharing information on social media, especially if you have a broad network. If you see organizations that are trying to get the word out, just commenting on their LinkedIn post or social media shares can go a long way. Another area is collaboration. You can collaborate, the members of the chamber can collaborate with other organizations and businesses within the Black community to address systemic issues related to economic empowerment and digital equity. This can involve partnering with local organizations such as churches, community centers, and advocacy groups that can expand outreach efforts and, most importantly, leverage resources, pooling resources. You got a great following on this channel. I got some people that go pass out flyers. We can handle the pizza, like that kind of thing. It will go a long way, believe me. Next is investment. You can help to invest in infrastructure and technology needed to improve digital equity. An example is if you have unused devices in your possession, in your business, in your company, you can donate those unused devices to a nonprofit refurbisher who will then refurbish that device or recycle it responsibly and turn that computer into a computer that can go back out into the community. In Georgia, there are 3 refurbishers that you can take those devices to if you are individual. And it doesn't have to be one in particular. It doesn't have to be a computer. It doesn't even have to work. But it can also be any type of technology, printers, servers, those types of things. They'll take it in and give you a donation letter and recycle it. Don't throw it away. Take it to a nonprofit refurbisher. So that is one simple way. You don't have to invest any money. It's just the time that it takes to take it over there. But if you have the availability of investing in the funds, you can help with digital literacy programs and investing in technology for these communities. Next is innovation. You can support innovative solutions that help close the digital divide. That could be alternatives, infrastructure models, collaborating with startups, or investing in research and development. Economic empowerment. Black-owned businesses have historically faced systemic barriers to economic empowerment, limited access to capital markets and resources. Members can work to address these barriers and promote empowerment by supporting policies and programs that increase access to capital, mentorship, and business. Remember, I talked about the matching funds. If I am an organization that has all the things in place to be able to support internet infrastructure, but I don't have the matching funds, that's going to take me out of the running for being able to do those projects, regardless of who I am. So there may be an opportunity there. There is probably an opportunity there around those organizations that are trying to be a part of the infrastructure projects particularly around capital, mentorship, and resources. Cultural competency is simply just being in equity. These are the last 2. In equity. A lot of the programs that are going on right now are for people that are in communities where we were probably born and raised, and or that we serve and do business. And it's important for us to be able to be a part of the process. One thing I want to note to you all is that historically Black colleges and universities are playing a big part in this process. The chamber and HBCUs could potentially partner and work together. So the Department of the NTIA announced that they have awarded $175 million to 61 colleges. This happened in February. To 61 colleges and universities as a part of the Connecting Minority Communities pilot program. These are the colleges in Georgia that have received funding: Atlanta Technical College, Fort Valley, Morehouse School of Medicine, and Albany State. Their projects are specifically related to improving the internal infrastructure and or improving, they have different projects, and I didn't provide a link, but there's different projects that they're working on. But I hope to continue to engage these schools and all the other HBCUs, such as Payne College and Spelman, oh gosh, why is it escape my mind? Morris Brown, Morehouse, outside of the School of Medicine, and all the other HBCUs in the state of Georgia, and technical colleges and other minority serving institutions, in order to be anchors for this work. Primarily for research and data collection. These schools have a long history of conducting research and collecting data, specifically that address and affect the Black community. So primarily, the members can collaborate with HBCUs to design research projects and support their data collection efforts. Again, also educational programs, partnership opportunities, partnering with the chamber could help to identify and support businesses and entrepreneurs that have digital business models, help to leverage resources and make connections for the HBCUs to identify business and entrepreneurs that will benefit in partnering with HBCUs specifically to address the digital divide in their community. I can tell you right now, Fort Valley, where Fort Valley State is at, and also Albany, they both could use the help and support in supporting their projects, which are now just going to be pilots, in seeing it fully through. We talked about advocacy and policy development, entrepreneurship and innovation, and community engagement. So I know I'm at time, or almost at time. I'm going to leave this slide up, but I do just want to pause for a second and say thank you all. For anybody that has to drop off right at 12:30, no worries. I have to tell you all about the Affordable Connectivity Program, but Venus has put a bunch of links in the chat. Feel free to click them, bookmark them. It's the digital equity dashboard. So if you want to see what digital equity looks like based on the data that they have in specific census blocks, you can do that. ACP Act Now, that is our actual campaign that we are running to promote awareness for the Affordable Connectivity Program. If you want to join us in that effort, click that link. Then there's maps and additional surveys around the work that we are doing here in Georgia, and how you can get involved. I really appreciate y'all's time, and I will stay on for some time for any additional questions or comments. But I just want to say thank y'all so much for being a part of this presentation. Thank you for being at the table early. Please, if you know someone in communities that we need to do this presentation at, please invite us out to come and make some connections for our office to be able to share this good word with the rest of the community. So thank y'all so much.
Well, thank you, Oneisha. And Melvin, I don't know if we need to cut off at 12:30, but there were some questions that I do want to get to, especially since you're recording. So those questions, the people who ask them, even if they're not here, that they can get to those. What say you? Do we have a few extra minutes? I don't know if you're on here or muted, but I'll just go ahead and do it anyway. So the first question was, what opportunities are there for small businesses that provide some of these services? And so just from my perspective, and Montez and Oneisha, you can chime in. That's why I wanted to bring it to the chamber, right? Because the chamber is in such a great position to, pull together a collective among its members to deliver, a lot of these services, which I'm sure are available through the chamber. You all have been told of, the different opportunities, and you just have to see what your value position is within the services that are needed. Oneisha or Montez.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
No
You
problem.
want to chime in? Sorry.
From an advocacy perspective,
Not
you
necessarily advocacy. They were talking about for, the businesses, right? If you provide technical support, or, if you're
Oh.
teaching digital literacy, any of
Oh,
those services that Oneisha mentioned that are needed, if you have, if you're working in those areas, you're already ahead of the game from my perspective. So like I said, if y'all want to, chime in on that.
I'll chime in real quick and say that when I worked at my previous job, we were always trying to find folks that could help teach digital literacy skills. We would put them on our payroll. Sometimes, we would have like part-time trainers, but we gotta get creative. So like if there's a for-profit organization or a subcontractor, it's just a matter of working with the local organizations to be their preferred vendor. Probably much easier to be a vendor of a nonprofit than a vendor of the state, because I feel like it might be a little bunch of hoops you got to jump through, right? So like really, I think educating the local community and also government entities, like in Clayton County, right? And in other, so even though the overall funding will go to these entities, that doesn't mean they can't spend it on contractors and to work, especially around digital skills and technical support. Now, y'all can be volunteers if you got the time and you want to do it. You can volunteer and do it. But like, if this is your business, absolutely work with local entities that could provide service, because a lot of times they don't have the money to pay staff. It's a lot, right, to hire and do all that. So being a contractor may be the better option, or having that vendor relationship. We know that public-private partnerships is going to be essential to addressing this. We just know the thing is the funding, at least at this point, cannot go to a for-profit business. That could change, but that's where it is today.
Yeah. And so just being in the space that I am, I know a lot of funders are looking for collaboratives. No longer are they just, supporting a single or, entity. The other thing is to address the questions about, starting a nonprofit, or, how long do you have to be a nonprofit? The best, I think, position that you could be is to collaborate and bring what you have and not reinvent the wheel, because a lot of times the funders are looking for seasoned organizations, or that collaboration between those and new. So you might want to consider that way to position yourself, for funding. This is just from my experience, in the space and working with a lot of funders as well.
So Venus, I wanted to answer your question. Opportunities for small businesses, to me, as Oneisha described excellently, about partnerships regarding anchor institutions.
Yes.
Anchor institutions basically going to be able to get a swath and a great amount of the bulk of funding. They are really great partners because you can be able to develop MOUs with them, memorandums of understanding. You can have cooperative agreements with them where they actually really have more of the liability. And then as it pertains to the more visceral levels of subcontracting, you can also do something with a simplified acquisition with these various entities, because then they have the insurance capacity, and then you also are able to build your performance and capacity with them as well. And they need you to be able to help them with various things, to consult, to provide administrative and professional and technological services,
right,
to be able to provide teaming arrangements and joint venturing arrangements. And so that's where you leverage your contacts through this chamber to introduce one another, maybe have some type of matchmaking to follow up to see how you can be able to meet the demands and really be able to weigh in and have more of a foothold as it pertains to now having the acumen of the opportunity and following up with it.
Absolutely. Thank you for how you say connecting the dots for the business owners, because even though it won't go to them directly, partnering with those nonprofits and those who are in the position to get that funding and then making the program stronger is definitely key. Someone asked, are there minority owners in the new services being added? And I don't know if that gentleman or whoever asked that question is still on there, if that needs clarity or not, but if y'all want to answer that.
I
That's
think
why we're here.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
Gotta stay at the table. I think that there's some folks throwing their name in the hat, but are they able to get through the full process based on the criteria? Criteria is what leaves us out a lot of time, keeps us from moving forward. So like, I think that we just gotta stay at the table. Now, we do have on the Digital Equity Advisory Council or Digital Connectivity Advisory Council, Venus is on. We do have folks from Urban League, folks from the Southern, the Partnership for Southern Equity on there. Like I'm trying to make sure that there's enough diverse leaders converging monthly to help shape our plan. Of course, we will share it out with the greater community, but somebody has to say the thing, and it can't be me a lot sometimes. So like, having folks in the room when these things come up and say, well, why is it like this, that, and the third, is important. And so that's why I try to always invite folks to be there and then also speak up, because if we're not there to say it, it won't be said.
Absolutely. And sometimes, like she said, she can't say it, but a lot of us in the room can, right? And so, there you go. So I think you've got great representation, on that council that'll bring the voices and make sure that our communities are included, right? The other question is there a way to follow up and get more information with the projects being founded in a specific county? For example, Carroll.
Yes, I put Josh Hildebrandt as our broadband director. Just reach out to him directly with your specific questions and he'll respond. If he doesn't, we are super busy. Just push the email back up to the top of his email box if for whatever reason, anybody on the team, it doesn't get right back with you. Give us a little bit of grace right now. It's a team of 3, but he's the main point of contact for questions about specific broadband projects in your community.
Sure. And then,
hold on,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
If y'all go to the FCC map and Zoom and put in a specific address, so for the person that just asked that question, if you go to the FCC map and zoom in all the way to Carroll County or even a specific address, you can actually, if you click on that address, you can see all the providers in that area, so that you contacting those providers before, depending on your question, before you contact Josh might even help the conversation move along a little bit faster. So I'll repost that link for anybody who wants to see what providers are in your area. A lot of people think it's only like 5 providers in Georgia, and it's way more than that. So, if you want to see where they are, who they are, and what type of technology they're using, you can go to that map. It doesn't have contact information for them, but at least you can see the companies.
Sure. And then I think we kind of already answered who would we contact to help start a nonprofit. I don't think that's in our wheelhouse or niches, but at the same time, I would say, just as we addressed before, don't start something new if you don't have to. It's kind of reinventing the wheel. And there's so much going on in this space. It would be better, not saying don't start one, but I'm just saying, not specifically for this or timing or whatever, but there's so much going on that you can support out here without the headache of a nonprofit, so to speak, because that's a whole other animal, a nonprofit and all the compliance with that, and then being ready, to meet the compliance requirements of the funding that's out there. And we talked about, being a seasoned nonprofit. So it'd be better, in my opinion, to, collaborate, work with other nonprofits, to, be a part of this process. And then I think y'all answered the one, do you have to be a resident or just do business in the state? And I think y'all are going to kind of address that going down the line, you know, when you all do your requirements for the grants.
Yeah, the funding won't go to any particular resident unless that person is just like a solopreneur, and you know, and that, you know, it's probably unlikely. Like it's going to go to a business that has and then those organizations, which is something that we'll add as a part of our process, is have to, and me and Montez kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday on the phone, is like, if you are a person who is a nonprofit or entity that want to be able to get these funds, you also have to have all your documents in a row from the state level. I'm new to government, so I still don't even know what all the rules are. I'm going to learn before we get this ball rolling, but you know, whatever it might be, you have to be in the vendor system. You have to have some kind of ID or something, you know, like all that stuff need to be in place before next year for anyone that wants to tap into this funding. And so I will make sure that we are very transparent as to what those requirements are, so it's no surprise. I'm still learning, but as I figure those things out, that is going to be a part of the process, especially for folks that are that know. So if y'all want to be added to our email list, you can go to our website and just, you know, fill out that form real quick, and I'll make sure that you're on our email list so we can so you can stay in contact. And of course, Venus, I'll keep her posted on all the things.
Sure. And I've also put I just created a form, you know, for other things that we're doing in the community outside, and we're collaborating anyway. Okay. I'm here to support Oneisha as well, you know, and get the word out. So I also included a link in there, an interest form, you know, to stay in contact, because I'll be doing some other things trying to educate, you know, my coalitions and the people that, you know, I work with as well. And there's some other things. I know we'll have to have a follow-up. I knew an hour and a half wasn't going to be enough time, but I can see where we need a follow-up just to share more information, especially around the organizations and funding, because we have a value position that we're presenting through Bank On, you know, programs that I manage, and the one in Georgia that really positions us really well for sustainability. But that's another conversation. So, but if anyone has any other questions. Well, thank you so much if you don't. And we thank you so much for coming to get this information. Thank you, Oneisha. Thank you, Montez. Thank you, Melvin. Thank you, ABC members, for allowing us to share this important information. If you ain't at the table, you on the menu. So you all are so far ahead of some of the others, you know what I mean? And now that, you know, you're informed and there's more information to get, you can share it with others so we can get this out in our communities where it's needed. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Call me Venus. This is Roz.
Okay, will do.
Thank you so much, ladies. I really appreciate it.
Yes, we appreciate you.
Take care.
All righty. Let's see. And so Melvin told me to end this. So I guess when I end it, I guess I'll wait till everybody gets off and then end it. Well, he might have made me. Okay, Oneisha, I'll reach out. Thank you.